The following is a presentation of the Missouri Sports Network.
Certainly glad you tuned in, and as always, the Missouri State Highway Patrol reminds us to take that 3 seconds and buckle up. It's 3 seconds that could save your life. Well, this is something I've worked on now for about 5 years. An opportunity here to go back and kind of relive January the 18th of 1998 in the Tournament of Champions. And Teddy Dupay and Scott Brakebill are along with head coach for the Bolivar Liberators, Darin Archer. And Teddy, first off, hey, thanks for being part of the show today.
Oh, sure thing. This is cool. I'm glad you guys asked me to jump on.
And Scott Brakebill, you as well, and you are quarantined there, in your pickup right now.
Yep, this is my home for a few weeks, I guess, working out of the truck. But thanks for having me on as well. And always good to rehash some good memories.
Yeah, Coach Archer alongside here, and we're maintaining as much social distancing as we can. But Darin, thanks for coming by today.
You bet, my pleasure.
And Teddy, we were talking a little bit off the air, but going back to that winter of 1998, what are some things that really stand out to you about the Tournament of Champions?
Really impressive, and like I said, this is cool to be talking to you guys so long later. I remember, it was just an unbelievable tournament. They treated us really well. We went to a lot of places to play that year. We were like a circus sideshow, and it's because we were fun to watch. But, we were saying as kids, anytime you had a packed house, that was great. Anytime you had baskets that weren't attached to the ceiling, that was really great. Anytime you had seats with fans on all four sides, now you really thought it was playing big-time basketball. So it was a lot of fun. The games were great, high-quality basketball, knowledgeable fans. But as we were talking about, some of the things I most remember were the things that didn't happen on the court. And that's kind of the beauty of youth sports is, building friends, building relationships, learning the life skills that are going to last you forever. So great tournament, but a great experience overall.
And Scott, you would actually play in that facility later as a collegiate player, but going back to that year in 1998, what are some memories that stand out to you?
Well, obviously living in this area, we were very familiar with the Tournament Champions. Most of us got to go to it growing up, and just to hear Bolivar's name be announced to play in that tournament, it was a year-long, build-up and anticipation to be able to step on that floor. We've had some past experiences and success on that floor, getting to play the Blue and Gold tournament every year, and previously winning it the year before. So we had some success on that floor, so we were excited, and obviously to hear what names, what teams from where across the country were going to come. And even just for us to get to see and watch them play was exciting. But to actually step on the court and get to compete and show everybody, our skill level versus theirs was, it was amazing.
And Coach Archer, that we were visiting, you've been here a little while, and just talking about some of the things that stand out to you about that particular Tournament of Champions.
Well, just the quality of tournament and the quality teams that they bring into that tournament, and the first-class job that they do in running the tournament. And it's really neat to see how it's evolved over the years. And I think CBS Sports broadcast some of the games now, and so it was a big thing back then, and it's grown even bigger and better currently.
So as a coach, you're coming in, you've got Teddy Dupay, the leading scorer in the country. Mm-hmm. What are you doing to prepare for Mr. Dupay?
You don't. I told our guys at the beginning of the tournament, and Scott may remember this, I said, hey, this is probably the only time during the season we're going to play as underdogs, so enjoy that moment. And I also said, let's do something to put our name in the record books. And little did I know that after that game, I think there were 8 or 9 records broken in that single game. And now when I told our guys that, I didn't want the versus Bolivar to be at the end of that record, but quite a few of them were. But it was an awfully fun night.
As you look back, Teddy Dupay, on that night, you had 52 points, which is still or 58 points, I'm sorry, which is still the tournament champion single game record, as well as you had 38 points in the game against Hartville, so 129 points in the tournament, which is also still the tournament record. What about that night stands out? You had 13 threes, which is also a single game record. What that had to be exciting.
Yeah, well, if I remember, wasn't the old record before that game? Didn't we both break it? Didn't Scott and I both break it that night?
You did.
Yes.
Yeah, pretty neat, I think.
Yeah, I can remember you guys maybe meeting at half court and shaking hands, and I was sitting next to a guy named Dwayne Banner, and I said, "There's 100 points at mid court right there, just between the two of you." What was it like during the game? Did you have much interaction?
Yes and no. I think we were. It's kind of hard to explain. Scott will understand. Rarely, when you're a guy like us, do you really run into somebody who's willing to step up and fight back? Like, everybody's motivated at the beginning, but then once you start doing what you're doing, it doesn't take an opponent very long to realize they're overmatched, if that makes sense at all. You take somebody's will to fight. I can count them in my head, how many times we've run into somebody who was equally as good on the other end. And gosh, one time I think of a guy, Mateen Cleaves, when they beat us in a national championship game. I knew he was good. I knew he was strong. But then once we got out there and you really saw how people respond to him, how much command he had, how much respect he had from his coach, you knew you were in for a big fight. And he would tell you the same. You remember those people who really earn your respect, because of their quality. And I think that's something that sticks out in the game. The other thing is that, the guys fouled me on every single shot. Refs were not giving us the calls.
Do you remember that? Was that the case, Scott, where you guys fouling them on every shot?
Oh, absolutely. And luckily for me, we like you asked about if we had any interactions on the court. Luckily, I didn't have to guard him. I was a big guy, so I think we threw everybody else, including the water boy, out there trying to guard him, and we double teaming him, and we still couldn't stop him. I think it was. I don't even know who it was, but I think we poked him in the eye once, and he still made it from half court. And, someone hit him in the stomach, and he still made it. It just continuously throughout the game. Once he started going, it was obvious that there wasn't much that was going to stop him.
Scott, you're absolutely right. I finally gave up and tried to double team him and put Andy Ruth and Michael Katrash on him. And if you guys remember, the old coaching boxes were right there at the end of the bench. And Teddy, we were double teaming you, and you pulled up. I swear I could have reached out and touched you. You pulled up. One of my kids hit you in the stomach. The other one's poked you in the eye, and you still hit the three. And they both looked at me, and I just shrugged my shoulders. I said, "Guys, I don't know what to tell you."
Oh.
Well, I got to tell you, I still play every day. I'm still working, trying to get better. Got to improve my shot and my skills, because the old body, it slows down a little when you get old.
Well, and Scott, and a question for both of you. We'll start with Scott. Talk about some of the teammates that you had back then, and their experience and what it was like to be able to enjoy that atmosphere. Even though that was a fifth place game, it was a tremendous atmosphere. But that just the guys that you share that atmosphere with.
It was, and really, for us, we were all kids that grew up together for the most part. So we've been playing together for years, and to get to step onto the court, and we knew it was going to be our last game at the tournament champions. We wanted to, like Coach said, we wanted to put our stamp at the tournament champions as a local team that stood up to this competition. And little did we know what we were actually getting into. We knew that they were going to shoot the ball as quick as they could. So we said, all right, we're going to fight back. We're going to go right back at them. And no matter how many shots they made on the other end, we went just as fast, pushing it back the other end, and nobody backed down. I mean, from Coach mentioned, Andy and Mike were the younger starters on the team, and then other seniors, Jason Smith, who was an all-tournament team selection that year as well, who I think he was just short of 30 points in that game, and people rarely mention his name, but he was on fire as well, making plenty of shots. And then of course my best friend since day one was John Hacker, and he was the guy who we kind of came out there and assigned him to Teddy, I think, off the start, because he was a physical guard. He was big, strong, quick enough, and I think Teddy got him at 2 quick fouls, if I'm not correct there, Coach. But we had that's when we had to kind of shift our game plan. When John got a couple fouls and pushed some other guys over, and then we just continuously kept moving across the board. But again, another stat that I think that people forget about that game was, I think Oliver still holds the assist record in the tournament champions. Is that right, guy?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's right.
Yep.
Yeah, so that says a lot to our team and how unselfish these guys were and motivated, and the way we moved the ball. Obviously, it ending up in my hands quite a bit. I don't know, either because I wasn't being guarded, or just the guys knew that I was getting hot as well, and just fight back. But yeah, it was. I mean, it's a memory that passes down to my kids now, and I'm very proud and honored to be mentioned every year when this tournament comes around. And what is it, 22 years ago? And I think when people ask me how many points I've scored, I think it's up to like 80 now. So by the time I'm 80 years old, I think I probably would have scored about 85, and Teddy probably would have scored 100 if memory serves me correctly.
Well, Teddy, you had some standout members of your team. Noah West, who did not play in the Friday night game against Hartville, which helped put you in the 5th place game there, and then Ernest Grant, who was also on that team. But it had to be a tremendous experience with them as well.
Oh, yeah, we had a really cool group of guys. It's funny, at our school all 4 years, my freshman year and sophomore year, we had 8 Division I players on the squad. And then my junior and senior year, all the big guys were gone, and, it was me, Ernest, and Noel primarily. Noel, who was just incredible. He doesn't play on Friday night, 7-day Adventist, and that hurt us throughout the season. I think we lost 5 games, and I want to say 5 of them were on Friday nights. So he's very important to our squad. Ernest, obviously, best athlete I've ever been around. Nobody like him, and the best man. He, when I went to Florida, I wore 24 in high school. When I went to Florida, there was a guy with 24. So I was first going to try and talk him into giving it to me, but then I changed my mind, and I wore number 5 all my times at Florida. And then even in the pros, I wore number 5 in honor of Ernest. That was his number. So, he's my best friend. We were dorm mates in college, and very, very close. I talked to him yesterday. So, yeah, I mean, when you're playing, it's cool about high school. You're playing with friends, and then you're going to spend all that time off the court. All the things that make a team good, you automatically do that when you're in high school. But, yeah, it was a lot of fun, and we as a team, we were ultra small, so we played, try to play very aggressive in the passing lanes, really push up. We knew in a half-court setting, even if we stopped somebody, we weren't probably going to get the rebound anyway. So we just kind of calculated if we can go out, really pressure the ball, see if we can get people dribbling up the sideline, get them in a speed dribble. If we could force turnovers, it was worth taking that risk because we could convert it on the other end in transition, and so we'd give up buckets. But I think when a team was willing to pass the ball, which a lot of young point guards are not, we pressure them, they try and dribble through it like they have something to prove, and once we get them in a speed dribble, they're in big trouble. But yeah, when a team's willing to move the ball, pass the ball, and be unselfish, it opens us up to giving up a lot of buckets, especially around the hoop. So, we were just looking for ways to win. That's a lot of fun, but we were small. We were real small.
198 points scored, I believe, that night. So everybody got the ball up and down the floor, and like Coach Archer mentioned, that the 9 or 10 records, single game records, broken in that game. Not to mention the total points in the tournament, which Teddy set. But when you leave there, you come out of that Tournament of Champions experience. Kind of give us an idea of what the rest of each of your seasons were like, and we'll start with Scott.
I'd like to not remember the end of your season. You're talking about it.
I share that thought, Scott.
Yeah, Coach, it's hard to talk about to this day, but we had had an amazing year. We had an amazing career there in Bolivar, really leading up to many more successes and great teams after our success. But yeah, we obviously our only losses to throughout the season were during the tournament champions that year, up until the very last game of the season, which most of us remember. We lost in the district championship to Nixa. So yeah, that's kind of how it ended. It ended bittersweet, but that's still not easy to talk about 22 years later. But it's great to remember the great times that we did have, and the amazing team that was on the court from top to bottom.
And Teddy, what was your remaining season like?
That whole year was really cool. Like I said, we traveled a lot. We played in the KMOX in St. Louis, played in Springfield. We played in City of Palms Classic in Fort Myers, obviously. We played in a Hooters event. We played several just really big marquee events. So the whole year was really fun. After that year, I would go on later in that season to break the all-time Florida scoring record, and that record's still there too. And so that was pretty neat. We went on throughout the season and made a great run deep into the playoffs all the way to the end. But then we ended up losing to Miami Senior High School, who Frank Martin was the coach. He's coach of South Carolina now. They had Udonis Haslam, Wright, Silburn Robinson, Antonio Latimer, Steve Blake. Basically had 5 NBA players in their starting lineup. But luckily, I got 3 of those guys to come with me to Florida on our team that won, SEC championships and went to the Final Four and stuff like that. And that's how we ended that season, number 2. And the same thing we did 2 years before against Vince Carter and the crew. We were ranked 6th in the country. We lost in a state championship to Daytona Beach Mainland. So, then we finished 2nd when I was in college. We lost in a national championship game to Michigan State. So, if you listen to my dad, he'll tell you I'm the best loser in the country.
Well, did you guys have an opportunity, after that historic night, back in '98? Did you ever have another opportunity to meet, or did you kind of follow each other's careers a little bit? Because I know, Scott, you had an opportunity to play in the Sweet 16, and Teddy, you were talking about your postseason at the college level. Did you guys maybe pay attention a little bit?
Absolutely, yeah. I still recall to this day when we did meet after the game or during the all-tournament team announcements. Teddy was like, "Hey, I'll see you in the NCAA tournament," because we kind of both knew at that time we both had an opportunity to be there, and we did. Little did we know, a year later we were able to play in the big stage at Missouri State and get to the tournament and play against Wisconsin, Tennessee, and then Duke in the Sweet 16. And then I think it was the year after the year beyond that is whenever Teddy would get to the championship game at Florida. But yeah, definitely followed him just as close as any other players. That it's just kind of the thing that you do after you play against someone is gonna shine on the big stage. It's neat to turn around and watch them and see how they do, and then again 20 years later, I've got 2 boys that are asking me, "Hey, who'd you play against? Anybody in the NBA?" And then that list goes down, and Teddy's name's always on there as well, because that's a big name down here and across the country that people will always reflect back on, especially during these times when we don't have an NCAA tournament. It's a great time to reflect and look back on those games and relive them.
Teddy, same question there. You have an opportunity there maybe to kind of follow along a little bit. I know you were busy as well.
Oh yeah. You always follow the guys you play against, and like Scott said, when you get good enough, and that's always the key. People ask me, "What's the key to getting a scholarship?" It's be good enough. Those guys get paid millions of dollars to find the best players. It's not about exposure and that kind of stuff. If you're good enough, they're going to find you. But when you play against guys that earn your respect, you'll see them later. And, you always want the guys you play against to do well. It's kind of like if you're rooting for XYZ team and they lose in the Sweet 16, you kind of want that team that beat you to go all the way. It makes you feel like you lost to a winner. It gives it a little, makes you feel better about yourself. And then obviously we've been able to jump on the calls here a handful of times over, 20 years. But yeah, during the Bass Pro out there, we've had these calls, and when you look back on it, it's a little easier to talk about yourself now that it was just so long ago. When you're coming up, you always want to be humble and you want to deflect. But when you look back on what we did, people are still talking about it. Those records are there, and at the end of the day, you brought a lot of happiness and joy to people by playing the game of basketball, and to have person way out there talking to their kids about me way over here, down here is I'll tell you, it's pretty flattering and pretty neat. It's really, really cool.
Well, it's still the game that we've talked about around this area and the tournament champions more than any other. And Coach Archer, maybe the only time in the history of basketball that a coach walks off to a standing ovation after giving up 103 points.
Yes. Yeah, that was the most amazing thing was there were two teams out there just battling everything they had, especially after playing two previous nights and pretty contested games. But to walk off that floor after the game to a standing ovation in a fifth place game was pretty amazing. And Teddy, I've got a question for you, just for the record, and for my own personal well-being. Didn't you score over 60 points like a week or two after you hit 58 on us?
Oh yeah, I hit. We all the time really. I had 70 in one of the playoff games. We had games. I remember the first game of the year. I had the first 7 plays of the second half, 7 for 7, 7 threes, and I had 55 points with 5 minutes to go in the third quarter. And coach pulled me out. He's like, "It's a long season." So, he was not, leave me in at all costs. I averaged 42 for the season, but there were a lot of games where I didn't play the fourth quarter and we were beating teams bad, and he'd take me out. So, our offense was designed to let it fly.
Yeah.
And, we put the time in, we put the work in, and practiced as much or more as anybody possibly could. There's only so much time in the day, and I took a lot of pride in that. But with that said, I see 100% of the coaches now, even with people doing it in the league, they really limit what kids can do. And our coach was pretty open to, the best shot we could get is one that I took, and that was a good offensive plan. We slow it down and we start running plays, double teams and triple teams actually become, a real deterrent to shoot. There's better shots. But if you're in transition most of the time, and even if 2 or 3 guys are guarding you and they're backing up, or they're forced to pick you up at half court, that gives me a lot more room to maneuver around them and get to my spots. So, by just playing the style of play that was beneficial for us. And then 3 years later, he had an exchange student, a couple 6'8" guys, pretty good heady guards that couldn't shoot. And they still played fast. They still pushed the ball. But he was able to adjust his coaching style for the pieces that he had. And the pieces he had with me were to let us loose, and I really am thankful for that. Because I don't think I'm so small that had he not done that, and in that humble and open as a coach, who knows if I would have got the looks? Because when you look at me, you wouldn't think, hey, let's give this guy a chance for at the next level. He had to let me show my stuff, and so that is something that I do not overlook, and I didn't then either, and it's really changed my life.
So, Coach, what I take from that answer, just to clarify, is we held just a hair over his average, so that's pretty good defense in that book.
After all these years, I can finally rest easy at night.
Wow. Hey,
Let me ask you guys this. Do you have I know this seems crazy. Is there a video of that game?
There is, and I'm trying to track it down. There's a couple players that I think may have it. I'm still trying to get in contact with them, and hopefully we can get that back out and get you a copy of it.
That's how long ago it was. I got a lot of games like that. We played Compton Dominguez. They were number 1. They had Tayshaun Prince, Tyson Chandler, Kenny Bruner, Jason Thomas. I want to say Trevor Ariza was young and on the bench, didn't play. They were number 1 in America. I think we played them. We lost by 1 point in the city of Palms, and nobody has the darn game on film. And that's how ancient stuff is. Crazy.
I will do my best to track it down for you.
Let's get that baby on YouTube. Let's get some views.
You bet. That's right.
Well, gentlemen, I certainly appreciate you guys all of you, being generous with your time. This was, it's 25 minutes long, and I could have went 2 hours, but it's fun to look back on, and I really appreciate you guys being generous with your time and allowing me to kind of break into your daily routine. Although people probably aren't doing much right now, but I appreciate it.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you, Guy, for putting this together.
Hey, you bet. Coach Archer, thanks as well.
You bet. Thank you.
You bet. We're going to step away, take a quick time out.
This has been a presentation of the Missouri Sports Network. Thank you.